I have walked out on a pool deck and been like,
boy.
excuse me. And it didn't go over very well, so I didn't do that again.
No. I'd love to have seen that.
Excuse me.
Welcome to Fit2B Radio. Slip on your minimal sneakers, notch your headphones into your ears, tuck your smartphone into your pocket, and take us along for a walk while we talk. Or just grab a cup of your favorite drink and get on the floor and stretch a bit while we bring you all things fitness, core, and diastases recti related.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Yep. All right.
Born ready.
Born ready. I love that.
I love your first one though, when you're like, I wish I could just say all those things. I know, that is so bad.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fit2B Radio. My name is Chris Benke. I'll be your host today. I'm also here with Beth Learn. She's the CEO founder of Fit2B Radio and Fit2B.com, our amazing fitness website. And today we're going to talk about something that I'm curious to see how we're going to make a podcast out of this. Actually, we were talking about in the pre-show. We're going to talk about squats. And to me, squats are just an exercise that you do, not something that's a podcast episode. But Beth assures me she is 100% certain that not only are they podcast episode worthy, but it will be an amazing podcast. So Beth, how you doing?
I'm doing good. And squats are totally podcastable.
Totally podcastable. And have you done any squats today?
I think I've done 2.
Oh my goodness. It's amazing. All right. So squats. So for those of you that are listening and watching this, and you might not actually 100% know what the squat exercise is, why don't you just run us real quick, kind of an overview of what is considered a squat? When we talk about squats on Fit2B or on this podcast, what are we actually talking about?
Oh, well, I'm going to demonstrate it. So if you're watching the live video, then you can see me doing one. So I'm actually at a squatting workstation right now, but a squat is where you're standing up straight and you're going to press your hips back and bend at the knees, but keep your upper body as upright as possible, right? So you're hinging at the hip fold crease and your knees are tracking with your toes. You're bending at the knees. Squatting is probably one of the most traditional weightlifting exercises. And I say I did 2 today because I did one while I was getting something out of a low cupboard, and I did another one when I was picking up the hairbrush I dropped on my bedroom floor.
Got it. So squats are not just it's not just an exercise you do in the gym, but it's something that you should be, you do it in your life. You're doing
I think so. Yeah, because the alternative to picking things up off the floor is to bend over, at our backs or round our backs or kind of lunge forward or lunge back, which if you're doing a good lunge, then that's great. Right. But most people kind of do this weird, twisting and rounding their shoulders. And there's kind of this grunting sound they make when they pick things up.
Yeah.
I did squats at the gym yesterday too.
Got it. So it's your favorite exercise, right?
It's one of my favorite exercises.
It's not your favorite? What's your favorite?
Right now, my favorite exercise right now would probably be box jumps.
Okay. Box jumps. That's exciting to me. I like box jumps.
Yeah. Last week, my favorite exercise was balancing half moon against a wall.
Okay.
It changes from week to week.
So being a fitness expert that's got a whole platform about fitness, that makes sense. You would have multiple favorites.
Yeah.
But right now we're talking about squats. Squats is like a diehard, one of your top exercises all the time though, because you're always talking about it.
Yeah, I am.
You really are. So why? Why is that? Let's talk about that.
Because if you can't squat, you can't poop.
Okay.
Is probably
Okay.
I mean, that just gets messy.
But you can poop and not squat?
Yeah, but it's very messy. I mean, everybody's brains that's listening just went, oh man, Beth, come on.
Okay,
but it's true.
I'm going to let you just explain why you said that. I'm going to sit back.
That's the basic human, all of us need to be able to squat to eliminate waste, right? In American culture, first world countries, usually our toilets are kind of high, so we don't have to squat very far. We just sit down. Also, being able to sit down in chairs, that probably would have been the more ladylike first example I could have given. But then again, not everybody sits in chairs. So
right.
That's also kind of a first world thing.
Another thing I notice is in other countries, people squat instead of sitting or leaning against a wall. They squat.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the bus. I'm going to squat and kind of rock.
And it feels good after you've been standing for a long time. It really does feel good to drop into a deep squat if you can. If you can't, then it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to squat down if your hamstrings are tight and your calf muscles are tight, and then it pulls on your knees and it pulls on your lower back, and then it's just unpleasant, and nobody wants that. So
what do you mean by deep squat? Like, explain that.
Well, unplug your ears if you can't handle the A word, but in the weightlifting world, there's a term called ass to grass. And so that is when you're dropping your booty all the way down to the ground. And now my booty does not actually touch the ground. My mechanics, my personal body limits don't allow that, but it is trying to get your hips as low as you can while maintaining an upright body, not tucking your butt under too much. Which if you tuck your butt a lot when you squat, that's called a butt wink.
A butt wink.
A butt wink. Yeah, there's all kinds of terms for squatting.
We need to add some of these terms in the show notes.
I will. That way, if anybody reads them, they're like, nope, I don't want to listen to those things. They can just skip it. But
okay, so explain the butt wink again.
Okay, so here, I'll demonstrate it. Now I have to take off my earphones so people can actually see. Otherwise, I'll drag my laptop off of it.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, while she's doing this, I'll give you a play-by-play. So she's squatting down with kind of a hunched back.
Okay, so if you saw that.
Yeah, we saw that. We were doing a play-by-play while you were.
Oh, you were? Oh, good. Okay, so I don't have to explain it. So it's where you go to squat and you tuck your butt way under. You don't keep your hips untucked. I like to call it the ski jump butt because there's a little bit of a launch pad off the end of your booty where your lumbar curve still exists. You don't want to flatten out the back.
And that's bad for the back, or?
In a deep squat, for the spine to be totally flat, that's fine. But when we start to see a rounded back in a deep squat, that means there's some tightness in the hamstrings because things are pulling your pelvis under.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And the reason why we love to see that nice straight back in a deep squat or a little bit of a lumbar curve in a more shallow squat is because that position naturally stretches your pelvic floor and it also activates it. So it's really, really interesting sweet spot where the hammock of those low core muscles is supporting all of you up and in, but it's also being stretched by the motion. It's an active stretch.
I like it. So you're stretching, and it's good for strengthening a lot of big muscle groups too.
Yes,
that's another
huge. It's huge for the hamstrings, huge for the quads, glutes, core. If you've got a bar on your back, then you are using some upper body motions. If you're pressing a bar, if you're doing a big motion like a deadlift with a clean and a press, now you're talking about a full body motion. Right. So the squat then becomes this platform for other bigger things. That real life application is I've got a kid in one arm and I'm squatting to pick something up off the floor or squatting to wipe up dog poop. There's that poop word again. Squats just have a lot to do with real life. And they save your back because if you're bending over and you're hip hinging and you have a good solid hip hinge, and by that I mean put your hands on your hips and let your fingers spread out and your pinkies should land in your hip fold crease. So you bend at your hips, not your belly. And you keep a long torso, then that's going to be okay for your back. But there's still a little bit more pressure to your lumbar vertebra and intervertebral discs in that position.
Right.
So we only have this one body, and we want this body to last. So if we can pick things up.
Right. So you fold your body over, all that is pulling.
Yeah. You've got a lot of weight going forward. And it's not that you can't do that. In fact, if you're putting something into the back seat of your car, loading groceries, loading kids, loading pets, you kind of have to keep your legs straight and lean forward and maintain good integrity through the spine. A lot of times people don't do that. They tuck their bums, they round their backs, and that just puts a little bit more pressure through the body and creates more wear and tear. Whereas if you can squat and keep your torso more upright, that's going to be less pressure, less wear and tear.
Right. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So why is it that we don't do them as much in our country in our everyday movements? Because it really is true. Is it like the chairs? Are the chairs ruining it for us?
I think that's part of it. I think we've outsourced it. We don't need to squat. We put things at eye level, and we have these chairs we sit in, and we have outsourced a lot of motion in our lives where we just don't need to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And if we do go to rarely get something from the low cupboard, which we have already deliberately put there because we don't use it very much, right? So on the rare occasion we do it, we tend to kind of contort ourselves and bend over and bend one knee and torque our hips and reach in, and then we wonder why we strained our back instead of being able to drop into an easy squat and fish around.
Right.
Little kids, when you watch a baby, they squat. It's the cutest thing ever. Little kids, that's how they learn how to walk, is they go from crawling and then they pull themselves up like an assisted squat. And then you see them drop down into this cute little crouch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a natural movement.
Yeah. And they're perfectly aligned because they have to be. At that age, they're not thinking about how they look. They're just thinking about what's the most efficient method of moving and not falling.
And then somewhere along the way,
bless you. Somewhere along the way, Chris starts hacking.
Somewhere along the way, they lose that.
Yes. Woo. He's got it. He's okay. So yeah, somewhere along the way, and I think it's because they copy us. Like my kids started by squatting, and they started with their toes forward when they stand because it's the most amount of balance. But my husband stands with one foot kind of turned out to the side. And I have this way of cocking my hips to one side, and I've noticed my son, he stands with that same exact foot turned out. And my daughter, she copies how I stand, and they copy how I was picking things up. And as I got better about squatting more in my life, my kids have started copying it. I haven't had to say anything, but they do what we do as grownups. And that's just this nature versus nurture thing kind of kicking in.
Right.
So if they move a certain way, but they're surrounded by grownups that move a different way, they're going to naturally copy what's around them.
Right. Huh. So, all right. So you're an average American person, let's say. And you say, okay, listen to this podcast about squats, which is really interesting. And they really did make a podcast out of it. It was interesting. And now I want to try doing it. And so I start squatting down, but my heels do not touch the ground. What do I do about that? Is that okay? Should I still do squats?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
First of all, you don't get good at something without practicing it, right? But the thing about squats is if you keep forcing yourself to try them in various ways, but your body is resisting, you can end up causing, again, more wear and tear, more pressure, more discomfort. Like if your knees hurt when you're squatting, the solution is not to keep squatting even though your knees hurt. Or if your heels pop up when you're trying to squat, the solution is not just to keep squatting. It's actually to look at why those things are happening. Why are your heels popping up? It's probably because you have tight calves. Okay, so what you need to do is stretch your calves and warm up your lower legs before you start doing your squats for the day. Obviously, you should squat to pick things up if you can throughout the day. But if you're doing a squat workout and you're working on your squats, asking yourself what tools, what stretches, what warm-up motions you can do to improve your squat without hurting yourself is key. So I have a couple of workouts on Fit2B for that. I have a squat prep, all the little things about squats. That's literally like all these little props, using a doorknob, using a wall, using something underneath your heels, using something behind your knees to take pressure off of your knees as you squat. There's some really fascinating things you can do that will activate or deactivate certain muscles to instantly improve your squat. And I've seen it over and over again. I have members like, oh, I just can't do it. I can't do it. And I'll say, go do our squat prep routine. And they'll do it, and like the next day they'll post a picture. I had no idea I could squat this deep. Look, I did that. I did that stuff in my butt. Oh my goodness, I can do this. I just had to adjust these certain things. So that's exciting.
Right. Because it's not always obvious if it's not a motion you're used to, right? Like,
right.
You know, you might not even realize your ability, or you might find out that you really do need to do some work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think the common thing is? Like, it's probably calf tightness, right?
Calf tightness is huge, because if you've been wearing heeled shoes, or, you know, the way we sleep with the covers over our feet, so our toes are pointed while we sleep. So you spend hours a day with your toes in a pointed position, and now you go to squat and you're asking your heel to be down and your knee. I mean, I can't, even if you look at my arm and my elbow, if I'm asking pretend my elbow is my knee, I'm asking my elbow to be over the heel of my hand, or even to come further forward. If I don't have flexibility here, because this is tight like it is with my wrist, that's not going to happen, right?
Right.
But we're supposed to have that flexibility in our Achilles tendon and in our calf muscles, our gastrocnemius and our soleus muscles. And so if we try to drop down and those muscles are clenching and tight, we need to release them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes just doing a simple release, even for myself, I'm great at squatting deeply. But sometimes if I've done a long walk, or if I wore a pair of heeled shoes to church the day before or to an event, I'm like, oh, these are hard today. Oh, I need to stretch my calves. I stretch my calves, boom, I'm dropping right down into them pain-free.
Right.
It's very fascinating.
Okay, so the calf stretch, like the simple calf stretch, like what's your recommendation, the simple way to
put your toes up on something? Like, start by putting your toes up on the edge of your rug, or the edge of a threshold, or you can stand on a step and hang your heels off the back. That's a pretty deep stretch, so start light. But, you know, you just let one heel back up and then let that heel kind of drop down and play with a straight leg versus a bent knee, because that actually changes whether it's stretching the gastroc or the soleus.
Right.
Those are two different calf muscles that function a little bit differently. One of them functions when the knee is bent, and one of them functions when the leg is more straight. So stretching them in different ways is important, just like squatting in different ways is important. Right. And then, you know, we like to use a dumbbell. So you take a dumbbell and put it on the floor, and then you put your toes on the neck of the dumbbell. I also have a half foam roll. It's that blue thing in the background. It just looks like a foam roll that's been sliced in half. And we have a routine on Fit2B called the half roll workout. Half dome, half foam roll workout.
Half dome.
Yeah. And it's really fun. You actually get your heart rate up a little bit, but you're also doing a ton of different calf stretches. And it's pretty important to lengthen those suckers out. Mm-hmm. Because our culture, our society, we just have chronically tight calves.
Yeah.
It's just epidemic.
Yeah.
Hamstrings would be the next one. Tight hamstrings, which is also a problem. Because we sit with our knees bent. I mean, I'm doing it right now, even though I'm in a supported squat position, which is one of my favorite ways to work. Doing this a lot has been great for my squat depth, but my hamstrings behind my knee have been getting tighter. So I've had to make a point of stretching my hamstrings when I'm done hanging out in a supported squat for a while, because the muscles behind the back of my knee have tightened up too much sometimes.
Right. So it's about varying what you're doing.
Yeah. And, you know, there's lots of different kinds of squats. There's the plie squat, there's the sumo squat, there's the shoulder width squat, all the different kinds of squats. And those all represent different ranges of motion that our body can do. And you might need different ones depending on what the task is in your real life.
Yeah. So what are some examples of your favorite? Like, your favorite, actually, no, here's a better question. What's your favorite example of needing to use squats in real life, other than the elimination of waste?
Okay. So besides needing to get up and down off a toilet, which when you can't do that, then you require assisted living, and that's a great expense. You know, that's a problem. But besides that, anytime I need to lift something heavy off the ground. Right. If it is tiny, then I do more narrow stance. But if it's big, I tend to do a wider stance. So I'll demonstrate here. I've got this poof pillow, right? And it's like this, right? This could represent like a 50-pound sack of Epsom salts, which I buy from my local feed store for my hot baths. That's another podcast. Or, a bag of dog food. Okay. I did an Instagram story the other day about lifting a bag of dog food up into the carts, right? That you have to have good mechanics for that. You can't just swing that around.
Right.
So I'll squat down and I'll grab and I'll hold on, let me move my camera. So I'll come down and I'll widen my legs out, and then I'm picking this up and using my legs object and then put it where I need it to go.
Right.
So hugging the object.
The power is coming from the legs.
Yeah.
Back. I mean, it's a very obvious thing, but it's not so obvious to a lot of people.
Well, and the other aspect of that is, your back is strong, but it's strong because of a big network of relatively small muscles, right? You have the erector spinae muscles, you have the multifidus, the psoas is even like a deep spine hip flexor. But compared to your glutes, compared to your quads, compared to your hamstrings, those are all pretty small muscles. And they connect vertebra to vertebra to vertebra to vertebra.
Right.
Or they connect into your femur or they connect into your pelvis, but they're all kind of short and they're, when we were dissecting cadavers when I was in college, yes, we got to do that. They're pretty tiny. They're kind of stringy and they're tiny and they're not big and juicy like your glutes and your.
Right.
So you need those big, powerful, juicy, strong muscles to do these huge lifts to really make them work. Yes, I said juicy.
Juicy.
Yes.
Waste elimination. I mean, we're hitting all the words.
I was at Costco and I saw that they were selling tilapia loins. I mean, tilapia is fish, right?
Yeah.
How do fish have loins?
I'm not sure about that.
I stood there. My daughter was like, Mom, what are you staring at? And I looked at her and I was like, I just don't understand how tilapia have loins.
I don't know about that.
But it was a good cut of meat, apparently, and if you've got a nice thick cut of meat, that means it's a nice, thick, strong muscle.
That's interesting because tilapia is kind of a cheap fish too.
Yeah. I was loin.
Did you try it? Was it good?
I didn't get it. Because I was kind of disturbed by the word loins too. I didn't know if I wanted to eat something's loins.
Yeah, but like pork loins?
That's true, but see, my brain up until that moment had not connected that. I don't know why. And all the vegans are horrified right now. Or maybe they're happy that I'm actually considering this because I've been a meat eater my whole life. But I was like, apparently I can handle chicken breasts, but I can't handle tilapia loins.
Yeah, I don't know.
But those are muscles. That's what meat is. It's muscle. And we want those, the bigger the muscle, the more load it can carry.
Right.
And our legs and our glutes are designed to push and pull and thrust and power and shove and launch and drive. And if you're using your back and your arms, you're not going to get as much.
Right.
So that would be a real life example is picking up heavy stuff.
So stabilize the back, stabilize the spine.
Yeah.
Use the big, huge muscle groups of the lower body in a squat motion.
Yeah.
The right way.
Yeah. And whenever you use them, whether you're doing one or two in your day, when you're doing a certain chore or fishing a big old pan out of your bottom cupboard,
yeah,
you send a rush of blood and circulation to those areas.
Right.
And that's a good thing.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, I wasn't sure about this podcast on squats, but it's actually been kind of entertaining. I should
That's one word.
Squats. I should do more squats. How should they get started?
Well, our squat prep video on Fit2B is free. If you Google Fit2B, FIT the number 2, the letter B, and then squat prep or squatting, you're going to find that video. And then we have one that's just for our members that takes that to a whole different level. It's a squat challenge, and it's working on single leg squats from a supported position and just ironing out a few more of the kinks that people might be dealing with when it comes to squats, but at a much deeper, more intense level.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But anybody can start with that squat prep.
Start with the squat prep. Check it out. If you're a member, you've got a lot more resources. Talk a lot about that. If you're not
I talk in squats I talk about squats in all of our videos.
That the squat prep is a pretty awesome resource for free too.
Yeah.
So you should check that out. And so they do that, and they get going. And what can they expect? Like, what are they going to run into? What are their challenges they're going to find as they're developing those muscle groups?
Well, the first challenge they're going to run into is that they have to find a few props. And I don't know what it is, but sometimes people's brains are like, oh, I have to go get something. I just hit start. This is too hard. I can't go get something. I have to go find a doorknob.
I say suck it up.
I quit.
Suck
exactly. Well, yeah. So it's like, you know what? Don't let that get in your way. Go into the video knowing that you're going to need to grab a couple of props, but that you're going to see some breakthroughs. Okay. And start keeping those props around so that when you look at them and you think, oh, I should put that away. Nope, I'm going to use it first. I'm going to use it to work on my squats first. The other thing that people can expect is that they will see relatively quick changes, but they should also know that if their body strongly objects, like if they go to do any of these things and it bothers them more, something hurts more,
right?
Then that's when physical therapy comes in. I know I talk about physical therapy a lot, but man, it is pure gold. It's really not more expensive out of pocket if you don't have insurance than a good massage. But you're going to walk out of there with tools and exercises that are specifically tailored to you. Because, yeah, okay, it might be tight calves, it might be tight hamstrings, but it also could be a problem with how your knee joint is articulating. It could be patellar femoral syndrome. It could be shin splints. It could be, it could be compartments. There's so many little things that can be going on in your legs. And so if you're doing all the things that I recommend and you're not improving, and in fact, something is kind of hurting more and something else started popping, that's bad news bears. So, but it can be dealt with. It can be treated. What happened is you just discovered something about your body that you didn't know before.
Right.
And your body is trying to tell you something about something that you can fix.
So don't give up. Pay attention to it.
Don't give up, because this is such an integral life habit. Squatting is considered a battle, BADL, a basic activity of daily living. In senior fitness, when they're doing a fitness testing, they will usually include a sit to stand test because it is so indicative of your overall ability to do life, basic activities of daily living. If you can't sit to stand.
What's the sit to stand test?
Okay, so what it is, you sit in a chair. And they count how many times you can stand up and sit back down in a minute. And, some people can't.
Right.
They get to certain ages and they can't. They've lost that ability. They bought the toilet seat riser. They bought the recliner that lifts for them. My dad has one because he has neuropathy. Hi, Dad. Love you. Sometimes those things are awesome because they let you keep doing the other activities of life. But the longer you can maintain your ability to sit and stand a bunch of times in a row without pain, the better off you'll be.
Right.
Because it translates directly to everything we do.
And again, if you get to that spot and you're stuck and you're not doing well, you don't give up.
Right.
You need to keep working on it. Yeah,
you need to do the things and not just be like, oh, my back hurts, my knees hurt, I can't squat. I get really sad. It's not mad. It's more sad when I hear people go, well, my back started hurting, so I stopped doing that. I can't do that anymore. I'm like, oh, but you may have lost that ability, but let's try to get that ability back.
Right.
Let's do what we need. Because it just speaks to so many different things. My brain is going to holding grandkids on my lap and piggyback rides and getting on a bike or riding a horse. I mean, your ability to lift your body, let's not lose that.
Right. Yeah, it seems obvious when you say it, but I think a lot of people just give up, actually. Right.
Or they think of squats as, I do that at the gym. Mm-hmm. And so, I haven't done squats in years. It's like, well, but you could be, and maybe you are, and you're just not thinking about it because they're happening in your day, or you're doing a contorted version of a squat or a contorted, I'm going to pick that up off the floor and stand in this wonky way. Well, hey, why don't you squats pick that up? And as you do that, it's going to improve. And if it doesn't improve, you need to see somebody about that.
Right. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. So how do you tie up this podcast about squats with a nice pretty bow? Like,
since we started with an ugly.
Yeah, it didn't start real clean and nice. So how do we? What's the message that people need to hear about this? Because it is a non-conventional type podcast, and it is a very conventional type of movement that people need to be able to do to really do well with their overall life and movement.
Mm-hmm. I think the pretty bow on the ugly truth that if you can't squat, life actually gets more messy, is that if you want to be able to do life well with grace and dignity, squats are a huge part of that. You will save your back.
Yeah.
You will save your core. Okay. Less pressure in your core, which speaks to things like diastases, recti, and prolapse. That gets messy again, but it's true.
Right.
If you can squat well. And that doesn't necessarily mean squatting really deep.
Right.
If you think about, you bend over and where your hand is when you just bend over casually. And then you do a shallow squat. Weight in your heels, hips untucked, toes fluffy, ribs down, head tall, all those little cues that I teach you in the videos. And then you look at where your hand is there and compare what you're feeling in your spine, what you're feeling in your belly. It feels different. It feels more strong. It feels more stable, right? You don't feel like you're going to fall over on your head. And I like feeling strong and stable and powerful.
Yeah, right.
I like that. I like that feeling. I like knowing I can squat to pick something up. And then if I do that 2 or 3 times, I just sent some awesome signals to my body. Another thing is, I think hip, in terms of hip strength and bone density at the hip for women.
Right.
It's huge. It's huge. We have to load our hips. We have to load our hips. We have to do things like squats. We have to preserve the bone density.
Right.
Bones are stimulated to lay down new bone when the tendons pull on them.
Right.
So if we're not creating that stimulation of a little bit of impact, a little bit of pull, a little bit of jarring and jostling in good ways that don't hurt us, then we get brittle bone disease, and women actually spend more time in the hospital dealing with the ramifications of that than they do dealing with cancer.
Right. Right.
So
it's easy to kind of slip into that too.
Yeah. A lot of women are dealing that at earlier and earlier ages. And that's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. But we're so inactive, and we're outsourcing so many motions, and we're looking at exercises, what I do at the gym or what I do during a 20-minute video, and we're failing to see that there's all this motion available in our daily lives.
Right.
And so we're getting weaker as a society instead of stronger.
Yeah, like WALL-E. Like the WALL-E show, the movie.
Oh, it totally is like that.
Which is scary.
Well, that's not pretty again. You asked for a pretty bow, and I did the not pretty bow again.
Okay, do the pretty one real quick. Redo it pretty.
Okay, here's the pretty. Look, I spent time in my garden, and I was pulling weeds, and I was in a squat, and I picked flowers, and I put those flowers in a vase, and I got a great lower body workout. There's the pretty.
Bam! You just nailed it. I like it. Well, thanks for doing the podcast on squats. You are right. It is podcast worthy. I'm glad we did it. I think it's real valuable. I think if you're out there listening to this and you kind of want to see some of the stuff that Beth demoed, you should check out the site. And then just go to the podcast link, and this link will be right there. And there's a video.
Yes.
So you can see what she was doing. I think if you're wanting to develop some of those muscle groups that you may have been neglecting, like we mentioned, check out that free squat prep page, which will be linked in the show notes as well. There's tons of resources on our website, even if you're not a member. If you are a member, like Beth said, you already know. She talks about squats in almost every video. So you should be if you're not a member, be a member. What are you waiting for? Get it done.
Yeah, get in there. You're missing out, peeps. Missing out.
What do you have to lose? Nothing. Like, you're going to be healthier if you make healthy choices. So I encourage you to do that. But anyway, I think that wraps up our squat thing. We should probably think about doing other podcasts where we focus on certain things like this that I think people have a lot of bad information about. I agree. So,
yeah. Subscribe and leave us a comment and let us know what your ideas are for which movements we should focus on in future podcast episodes.
Yeah. Keep it real though.
Yeah,
Actually, I'm interested. Now that I said
It can't be about wiggling your ears. I don't think I could do a whole podcast about wiggling your ears.
We could collect all of the weird ones and do those as one podcast.
Beth, what are your tips about wiggling your ears?
Yeah.
None.
Curious about that as
I have
well.
nothing.
But good ones. We're excited about hearing about those. So leave a comment. And until next time, thanks, you guys.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Hey, thanks for listening today. I truly hope you're taking us along for a walk while we talk, but in case that didn't happen, remember that it's never too late to move when you have membership access to Fit2B.com, which has everything from easy to hard, beginner to advanced, 5 minutes to 55 minutes. Once again, be sure you're following Fit2B on Twitter at Fit2B, Instagram at Fit2B Studio, and subscribing to this podcast.